We have an exciting episode for you this week. We've got questions on the Magna Carta, the state of the church in Latin America, and what does Charles think about Joe Biden saying, "God save the Queen"? For real, not a joke. Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu, now being broadcast in podcast on the Crusade channel. Talk radio the way it should be. CrusadeChannel.com. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a gothic Charles Coulombe.
Gothic? Do you mean Gothic like the architecture or goth?
I guess gothic, but I feel like goth Charles Coulombe would be fun too. I don't, just for a day though. Just for a day.
Black hair, black lipstick, white pancake makeup, black clothes. You would like that, would you?
Do you have any goth friends, Charles?
I've got some retired goth friends.
I don't believe you.
You don't? I have a friend in Cleveland, Ohio, whom you know, who was a goth.
So, what's the first wave of goth? Because, like, the wave of goth that I experienced, I don't know, perhaps the second or third wave, at least or so I perceived. It was like, 9 Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson people, pretty, weird music people, like that. So what gothic do you, or what goth do you think about when you hear that?
Early 90s. And,
okay.
Again, people with both genders, black hair, white makeup, black lips, black clothing, usually very frilly and faux Regency, and they call that goth. But, I can't really think what their music was or what the bands were. I had no idea. I was more aware of the people than I was of their music.
Sure. Well, so that's what I'm saying is, how do you know someone who's really old who is goth?
Well, because he's not really old. I mean, he's a couple of years younger than I am. Literally a couple, maybe 55 or something.
But still, I mean, like, what was in the culture there to latch on to in that way to make you goth? Like, was he goth when he was a young person?
Yeah. He was goth when he was a young person. I think it was sort of a post-punk thing.
Oh, okay. So like, it's like the Sex Pistols or something like that. Like,
well, but long after them.
Okay. I think I got you. There's some,
maybe,
yeah.
At the same time, the New Romantics, who I think kind of fed into the goth a bit. But I'm really not an expert. I really wasn't paying close attention either in those days. I had a career to deal with.
A career in what?
Comedy.
Well, that's interesting because don't comedians need to pay attention on some level?
Well, they do, but that's why I knew what the appearances were like, because I could make fun of them.
But nothing more than that.
No, that's all I needed. You'll find that comedians, although they do tend to be something rather philosophical, they do emphasize a lot about the appearance of things, especially when it's ridiculous. Would you consider staying out all night a healthy lifestyle? Especially wearing all that makeup.
Yeah, well,
Gee, I'd love to have my son and daughter as goths. I'd be so proud.
Okay.
I can say things like that. Yeah. The audience would roar.
Okay. I'm sorry I wasn't able to give you a roar for that one. Okay.
No, it's all right. You had to have been there. You never attended one of my shows. You may not even have been alive, which would really give you a good excuse.
What year was your last show? When did you stop?
85.
So I was 1 year old.
So why didn't you come?
I didn't get my driver's license yet.
Slow learner, huh? No, that's fine. I understand. Every family has, the thickie. It's okay.
We were over this last episode, Charles. I'm peaking right now. Okay, it's not slow learner.
Oh,
It's
okay. No, no. You say you're peaking, I'll back you up. I don't care. It could even be a widow's peak. It's who knows? I don't know. I'm just doing the best I can. Besides, I've been accused of being a piece of medieval architecture. You've never gotten this kind of abuse. And there's more. Do you know what day it is today?
no.
Well, in real time, ladies and gentlemen, today is June 17th, which is the official birthday of His Majesty the King. Hence the Union Jack in my lapel. But I'm staying true to my Jacobite roots with the Royal Stewart Society bow tie.
Wow. The birthday strategically placed between the Sacred Heart, the Feast of Sacred Heart, and Juneteenth.
Yes, indeed it is. Possibly to deflect attention from either, or to bathe in the aura of both. Well, I'll tell you what I used to do on Juneteenth
What?
when I lived in the beautiful San Gabriel Valley.
What?
I would go up to Lake Avenue in Altadena, and I would go to Big Mama's Rib Shack.
I've never been there. That's kind of a hike.
Well, you won't be there now; it's closed. But she had, now mind you, she was dead by the time I started going there, and now the place is closed. But it was in Altadena. Now they closed down quite a while ago, like 2018. I was very sad. Very sad they closed. But never mind. The Big Mama's had a particular dish I liked. Not a dish, but a plate. You know that I'm very fond of Louisiana cooking.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the
Do you like Popeyes?
I do actually. I like it much better than the Colonel.
Wow.
It's true. I always get the spicy, and I get the dirty rice. Sometimes I get the jambalaya. I mean, it's not really Louisiana, but it's better than nothing. They used to have. They don't have it anymore, but they used to have really good greens, collard greens. With big chunks of pork. It's all gone. Anyway, so now we're going back to say 2018 when I would have been there. And what do we got? What do we got? Come on. Yes, Big Mama, you're doing it. You're doing it. Here we go. Welcome to Big Mama's Rib Shack and Southern Cooking. I won't bore you with the history, although it's interesting. But the menu was amazing. And I can tell you exactly what I would have had I been there. They had these combos. The Cajun combo, that was it. Jambalaya gumbo served with hush puppies. And I'd have the black-eyed peas. I'd have the collard greens, which always had ham in them. Sometimes red beans, rice, sausage, red beans, and rice, which I also liked very much. Great stuff. We shall not see that like again.
All right. Anything else going on?
Well, several things. The only Louisiana restaurant I know now in our area, other than Harold and Bell's down in Crenshaw, is the New Jewel, the Little Jewel of New Orleans, which is oddly enough in Chinatown, but it's very good. And you know me, I'll take gumbo where I can get it, even at Norm's. Norm's has gumbo.
Wow. Okay.
See, not like some people. I'm not ashamed.
Well, I know that.
I'll get my gumbo where I can get it. Get my jambalaya. The funny thing is the jambalaya here in Austria. They have a dish they call Reisfleisch, which means rice flesh, rice meat, and it's very much like jambalaya in a lot of ways. So I'm
Hmm.
always happy when I can get that.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's jump right into it because the questions are so cool on this episode. I want to give us a lot of time to really delve into
All
them. So,
right. Just remember that next Thursday, Thursday within the octave of the Sacred Heart, will be the feast of the Eucharistic Heart of Jesus.
Excellent.
And then you got Juneteenth and other stuff coming up.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, and this is Trinity Sunday, is it?
Is it?
No, that's not right. It was the Trinity Sunday was a couple weeks ago. Forget it. Never mind.
Yeah.
Sunday within the octave of the Sacred Heart. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. It's time for the memes of production.
Nationalize the memes of production.
For the common good.
Hear, hear.
What to do? Let's do. So Aurora just became a patron. Very first thing she does is sends in an epic meme.
That's it.
This is my favorite type of meme. Here we go. So, some very small, some brain activity. Watch Tumblr House on YouTube. More brain activity. Comment on Tumblr House videos, and sign up for their Patreon. Even more lit. But genius level, post memes on their Patreon, which is exactly what she did. That's brilliant, and you guys could do that too. Really perfect. It's an incredible time to sign up to become a patron. And I'm not just saying that because I want money, but
not that you refuse it.
We just did it like over an hour long pre-show, and that only happens when Charles is just absolutely on fire. Metaphorically speaking, of course. But no, it's really great. And I feel guilty because it's sort of like locked behind this paywall with Patreon. So really a good time. Get your questions asked when you become a patron. Send in some memes, and get more content and get it earlier.
And get praised for your fashion sense.
Always. All right. What else do we have? We have one or two other memes. We have one from a super fan with the moniker "Too Young to Be a Curmudgeon." So Charles's intellect, Kermit the Frog, normal, I guess, and then Charles's humor, evil Kermit the Frog, kind of the Jedi, I guess, because you have dark humor, but then I guess your intellect, it's kind of sort of like not easy being green. I think it's interesting take.
Not easy being green.
Yeah.
Although I don't consider my humor particularly dark. I consider it sort of sunny and, Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farmish. That's what I think of my humor as. You sound unimpressed.
Say that again. I didn't catch all of that.
I say I consider my humor to be very light and very Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farmish.
Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. I don't know what that is.
Well, it's like Pollyanna, a bright, happy little girl. Well, that's how my humor is. It's always bright and happy and cheerful, like me.
Well, delusion is the key to happiness. So there we go.
I've said that my whole life. I'm living the dream.
You're teaching a course on that right now. Okay, so
that's for sure. A master's class in self-delusion. Masterclass in self-delusion, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we got going. Everything's wonderful.
All right. So we have a question for the memes production. It felt fitting to put it here. It's from Miguel, who says President Biden recently said, "God save the Queen." Would Charles like to comment on the next episode? Well, here you are. Would you like to? I was shocked that he said that especially after we had this long, fun, fake heated conversation over this, and then he's saying this.
I get guff over it, and the President of the United States does it. Nice. I mean, if it's good enough for Sleepy Joe, it should be good enough for me. And you know what? Like him, I should just be able to, throw it in as an interjection apropos of nothing. Like you say to me, "Well, have you read anything really good recently?" Well, yeah, today I just finished Stephen King's new book, Fairy Tale. God Save the King. And I really, I thought it was a very good book. When I finished it, I went out and I had breakfast at the Cafe Vest. God Save the King. And it was really good. Well, I mean, if it's okay for the president, why can't I do that? But see, because I'm not senile, I remember that the Queen has died,
Right.
and now we have a king.
Well, you showed me a video. I guess so. So it seems like a continual thing that he has said,
Yeah.
kind of in a different context.
Well, as I said, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So anyhow,
I mean, the first time I watched that thing, God Save the King, I felt very, I don't know, strange.
stranger than usual.
I'd say. I mean, I remember one time when I went to Disneyland, God Save the King. I went on Pirates of the Caribbean. I did the Haunted Mansion. It's a Small World, the Matterhorn, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, God Save the King, the Peter Pan ride, and it was all pretty good.
Okay. So
God Save the King.
sorry, I'm sorry. It's I have to adjust a little bit to be able to handle your Tourette's syndrome of God save.
I'm giving you a master class in self-delusion, and you're obviously not up to it.
Obviously. All right.
But then who is?
Okay. Let me gather myself. All right. So the next thing on the item.
Gather yourself while ye may. Old timey is the flag.
All right. So probably a lot of you are wondering about the poll that we talked about doing. We conducted it again. Well, if you didn't sign up to become a patron, you kind of missed out on your opportunity to make your voice be heard. So 92 votes total on what's next after State of the Week. I kind of used the power of the pulpit a little bit, kind of added a little something. As stated on the show, we have several options to go from here. I must confess I'm hugely biased in favor of Book of the Week for two reasons. Number one, because of the board of directors. They want it due to financial considerations, of course.
As always.
And then just because it's more universal. People were skipping State of the Week. And so anyhow, so it looks like Book of the Week, which is nice.
Given the other percentages, how many wanted
okay.
European countries?
Yeah, because we have a lot of radio listeners. So European countries, 36%, which I feel not coincidentally is roughly like how about 36% of our audience, I think, is from Europe, according to YouTube statistics.
Here.
Canada's 4%.
God Save the King.
Australia is 1%.
God Save the King.
Book of the Week is 55%.
God Save the Librarian.
And then drop the whole thing. More time for questions, 3%.
God Save Joe Biden.
Book of the Week. So what we'll do, I know sometimes I say books that that Charles doesn't know, but for this we'll leave it to books that Charles has read. Obviously he knows probably like 10 times more books than I do. But so let's go into that with Book of the Week. This is going to be Books of the Week. So we happen to know both of these books. I've got the collector's edition of White Cockade, not available anymore. It's collector's edition, and then Everyman Today Call Rome by Charles Coulombe.
Mm.
And I personally, I felt this was a good pick uh, because it was such a good question last week on the um, from the gentleman who felt he wasted his 20s and now he's in his 30s. And I think so. Obviously, a lot of our audience are young males in their late teens, 20s, and 30s. And I feel like that gentleman's question was representative of a large number of people. And I think a lot of young men would be interested to see what young Charles is like. And
Mm.
these two books give you that opportunity to see what a younger Charles is like. Also, the Bill and Charles talks, by the way, the Beer Second Cologne's talks on the YouTube channel, they're from the 90s. So, depending, I mean, that's 30 years ago. That's a long time ago. Yeah.
Half a lifetime ago
So
for me.
you're in your 30s or 40s there. Uh,
From
so,
my 30s.
yeah. So that's even more of young Charles that you can enjoy. So Charles,
That's a nice word for it.
so what would you say? I don't know. What do you think of what's your take on these books? How are you feeling?
Well, I wrote the first one really to my age group, which, for those of you who aren't aware, are really the junior boomers.
Hmm.
Because one thing that people often don't understand is that the boom, it lasted 20 years, roughly 1944 to 1964. I was born in 1960. So my peer group were on the receiving end of the 60s, as you might say, but not the operative end. Our time, such as it was with the 1970s, when the forces our elder brothers had set in motion were institutionalized, thus creating what I like to call the decade that never should have happened. But, uh, and fixing forever the tastes of one Oswald Dupree, who we try not to talk about because he's such a louse. But seriously, it was very much a. I mean, I've reread it in the past few years, and there's nothing I would disagree with in it at all. Um, but Reagan was president, John Paul II was pope, and there was a somewhat more optimistic feeling in church and state than there is now. Um, it truly felt then as though the 60s were finally being stopped. But of course, that hope was illusory, as it turned out. Nevertheless, um, I still think it's a worthwhile book to read. A lot of good history in it, a lot of good explanation as to how we got to where we are, uh, and a lot of good observations. Now, the other book, The White Cockade, being a book of poetry, is much more personal, and most of the poetry was written when I was in my late teens and my early 20s. So it's slightly younger, if you will, than Everyman Today Call Rome. But same thing. I mean, the things that concerned me that animated me then continue to. I'm really, not mentally, I'm not that much different from what I was then. Um, I mean, I've certainly had a lot more in the way of experiences, and I've seen things go down the tubes in the ways I couldn't have thought they would have. But
I feel like
my
you're more chill now in a certain sense, where
yeah, yeah.
you're sort of more idealistic, more like let me proclaim this for all the land to hear. And now perhaps you kind of do that, but It's in a
Well, I
different way, I
know.
guess.
Yeah, the difference is I didn't realize quite how little the land gave a damn. I mean, one thing when you're young, you're filled with energy. You see wrongs to be righted, and if you have any guts at all in you, you want to do something about it, which is the way it should be. But when you get older, you realize that there's a reason things are screwed up, and it predates you and will probably outlast you. But you do what you can to fight it. Um, you know, I mean, we didn't start the fire.
Okay, don't. You're doing really well. You're doing really well. Just don't. We kind of turn there. Stay on track. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Okay.
I think somebody's getting very frightened.
I I stopped breathing and my heart skipped a beat when you did that because you were on a roll and then you just got, oh, am I going to go off the cliff? Oh, no. Okay. No. So,
All right, fine, but it's been burning since the world's been turning.
just,
Uh, we tried to fight it. All right, move along now. Nothing to see here. No, but seriously, there is actually, much as I hate to admit it, there's a certain amount of truth in those lyrics, in the sense that every generation gets handed a situation out of its own manufacture and has to try to do the best it can with what it's got. Um, Sometimes the situation is better than other times, but and then of course there's also the fact that every age has its own annoyances, and every age has its own pleasures, if you will, its own strengths. Um, when I was young, as I say, the outlook was much better than it is now, but it was still pretty bad. And there are things about today, despite trash can custodians and dominatrix dominavi, uh, that are just so much better than when I was young in the church. In the state, not so much. In the state, it's been a headlong retreat into garbage. Um, but in the church, although it's not as good as it was 12 years ago, it's still much better than it was when I was young. So, and the other thing is too that even with trash can custodians and dominatrix dominavi, the rank and file trad, and that includes the clergy, for the most part. I mean, yeah, there have been a lot of masses that have been ended, but there have been a lot of new ones that have opened up in certain places, depending on the bishop. Uh, so it's a mixed bag, like everything. But those two books are my eldest. My first, the products of my youth. And I think I've recited this poem on the program before, but it's the only one of my own I really remember. That I've really got memorized. And it's called A Note of Dissent. And I believe it just as much as I did when I penned it 40 years or more ago. I must admit that I often dream of the glimmering light of the old regime. In my secret garden grows the lily and the fair white rose. Over all the mournful cry of the double eagle fills the sky. In this day of grenade and tank, when real power lies in the bank, such yearning for a muse of fire runs counter to approved desire. Still I hope a day will come before my tale of years is done, when exile to the realm of dream is the soulless face of the new regime. I've fought it all my life, in my way, and please God, I'll go on doing it until the breath's out of my body.
Right. But there's really a lot of good books. I actually thought you were going to say, maybe it's one of your old person poems. The the movements that die at the end. You fight for.
Oh, no, that's a very new one.
Yeah.
I
I.
just wrote. I've written literally 2 poems in the past 5 years, of which the one you mentioned is called "To Gary Potter."
Hmm,
Gary Potter it's not in the book,
okay.
but to those of you who don't know Gary, he's a Catholic writer and I mean, he was a member of the Triumph Gang back in the '60s, and has really been one of my mentors as a Catholic writer. But I wrote this poem to him for in 2019 when I found out that he was not going to be able to attend for the first time in many years the uh, Catholic conference at St. Benedict Center, which they have every year in October. Catholicism.org, if you're interested, always has the information about it. But it's just a quatrain, 4 lines, and it epitomizes how I feel now, how I felt, you know, 4 years ago. And Gary, of course, has been in the fight much longer than I have. Our hopes for early glory fail. The causes that we fought for die. Still avidly his cross we hail in silhouette across the sky.
Hmm.
And the other one I wrote after writing the Grail book, it was the product of the sort of legendary detritus bouncing around in my head. And it goes, when Arthur was king in Avalon, oh, sorry, I messed that up. Hold on. When Arthur was king in Camelot and Clovis was king in Gaul, there lived a little fairy inside a garden wall. Now Arthur has gone to Avalon and Clovis we know not where, but this you may depend upon, that fairy is still there. Now if you go to find him, if you go to seek him, and be not kingsman true, pray you never find him, for horrid things he'll do.
Obvious influences on that poem. A couple jump out. That
The
the
wee
little
folk,
people, the wee folk.
the wee folk, oh, we that bless the wee folk will have naught to fear. Like, you can imagine the guy looking around him, hoping it's true. It's what they used to call whistling past the graveyard.
Hmm. All right. So anyhow, White Cockade, $10 in the bookstore. Everyman Today Called Rome, $16. Oh, I forgot to mention one benefit of becoming a patron: free shipping in the Tumblr House bookstore. Unbelievable, right,
Yeah,
Charles?
it's unbelievable. That's right. That's right, Vinny. And more than that, not an actor. Operators are standing by to take your call. Be the first on your block to have both of my first books. Plus, if you order now, they will not be wrapped around a rock and heaved through your window.
All right. Batteries not included. Some assembly required. All right.
Sorry, no CODs.
Sorry, no CODs. How could I
Void were
forget
prohibited.
that? Void were prohibited. Wow, that's testament to how long it's been. Void were prohibited. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you know how it is, ladies and gentlemen. We can't think of everything. Lydia in the typing pool, old Rose, the cleaning lady, uh, Tyrone in security. What's his name there in the mailing room? All of the happy crew at Tumblr House. We don't always remember to keep you updated on their doings, but be assured that unless they're estimating, as they may do later in the summer when it gets hot in the San Gabriel Valley, unless they're estimating, know that they're all happily doing their jobs, all with a smile, all working very, very hard to bring you the very best Catholic literature that money can buy.
hmm.
That sounded good, didn't it?
Oh yeah. Okay, time for the questions.
Oh,
All right, first question. Actually, no, you know what? I'm totally wrong. It's before the questions. One of our patrons says, I feel like Charles is due for another lightning round, this time with writers. Below is a list of writers who have several works. I'd like Charles to give what he believes is his or her magnum opus. Or if he
okay.
can't decide, what is his favorite work from that writer?
All right.
Wow. Okay, it's been a while since we've done the lightning round. Let's do it.
All right.
Plato.
Timaeus.
Aristotle.
The Neo-Machian ethics.
St. Thomas Aquinas.
The Catena Aurea.
Really?
Mhm.
Is that part of the Summa? Wait, I don't know Thomas
No,
Aquinas too. That's
it's
not part of the
separate.
Summa. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of I am not a philosopher person, but I think some people are going to take umbrage with that. Um,
That's
wi-
why I put it out there. I mean, look, if you mention St. Thomas, everyone's going to say the Summa. I've spent the last 2 years of my life studying the Summa in great detail. So, of course, they're going to say something else.
You're summa'd out. All right.
Well, it's like soup being left to Summa on the stove. Didn't you ever leave it to Summa on the stove?
Right. Okay. So,
Where did you and your family Summa when you were younger?
okay.
Jersey
Next,
Shore? You can tell me.
I don't even know what you're saying. All right.
Well, this to everybody. We used to Summa at Hampton Beach in New Hampshire.
Great.
Where did you spend the Summa?
Uh,
After you got out of school for the Summa, where did your family go?
um, I don't know. We never went somewhere. I mean, maybe we would do a trip to Vegas or something like that. And I don't know. One time we
So
went to
basically,
Colorado, then Pennsylvania. I don't know.
so you Summaed in Arcadia.
Okay, I don't know what you're doing.
You seem very suspicious.
I'm just confused. All right.
It's the guardian of truth.
Yes, it is. All right. Next writer is William Shakespeare.
Midsummer Night's Dream.
All right. Washington Irving.
Oh, wow. Well, Dietrich Knickerbocker's History of New York.
Robert Burns.
Auld Lang Syne.
Nathaniel Hawthorne.
The Marble Fawn.
Mark Twain.
Tom Sawyer.
You just won't conform, will you? You just have to be completely unconvinced. Okay. All right. Edgar Allan Poe.
The Fall of the House of Usher.
Voltaire.
Candide.
Charles Dickens.
Woof. Let me repeat. Woof. Um, gosh, that's tough. But I'll just go with my favorite, A Christmas Carol.
That's surprising, actually. That's really surprising. Okay. Ralph Waldo Emerson.
On being a nonconformist.
I like how you literally rolled your eyes when you said that. Okay. G.K. Chesterton.
Orthodoxy.
This is such a good list. Henry David Thoreau.
Walden Pond. Walden.
Does that hurt to say that?
Yes. I told my grandmother, when I read Walden, I said, because, he was able to live out there because his grandmother gave him an allowance. That's the only reason he was able to live in that stupid cabin. So I told my grandmother, if you gave me a big allowance, I could think deep thoughts like Henry David Thoreau. And her response was, if you could think deep thoughts like Henry David Thoreau, I would give you an allowance. So we were at kind of a standoff.
All right. Lewis Carroll.
Alice in Wonderland, although I love Through the Looking Glass.
Okay. Oscar Wilde.
De Profundis.
That's his nonfiction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. For fiction, if you want to go that route, I'd say The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Nietzsche.
Thus spake Zarathustra.
What is that about?
About 200 pages too long. What? Let's move along. I don't like Nietzsche.
Was it a 200-page work?
No, I don't remember how long it was. It was agony for me to read it.
Jane Austen. Have you read Jane Austen? That's interesting.
Northanger Abbey.
Wow. What do you like about that one?
It's comedic. It's satire.
You go to Jane Austen for your satire, huh?
Oh, yeah. I really loved her Love and Friendship, but that wasn't a full-length novel.
H.G. Wells.
War of the Worlds.
Okay. I don't know if this is a typo or what, but Carl Rayner? R-H-A-N-E-R?
R-H...
Carl Rahner. I think he flipped the A and the H.
Carl Rahner, Why I'm a Moron. No. I hate everything he did. All right, Denziger, fine.
Did he do that?
He did the English edition of Denziger.
Huh. Agatha Christie.
Oh, man,
that's a huge one.
It is, but we'll go with Murder on the Orient Express.
Poirot. Very nice.
Although I love Miss Marple.
Now yeah, okay. H.P. Lovecraft.
The Shadow of Innsmouth.
Ernest Hemingway.
The Sun Also Rises.
Karl Marx.
Shoot Me Now. No, Das Kapital.
William Faulkner.
Well, what was Flags in the Dust and became Sartoris. What became Sartoris was Flags in the Dust.
Wow. Flannery O'Connor.
A good man is hard to find.
C.S. Lewis.
That Hideous Strength.
Jack Kerouac.
Satori in Paris.
Allen Ginsberg.
Shoot Me Now.
You gonna go with Howell? Are you gonna go with
Howell? Yeah, I'm gonna go with Howell.
Did he even do anything else?
Yeah, he did, but not that Howell's any good, but everything else was utter crap. What else you got?
Ray Bradbury.
Oh, that is hard. Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Wow. Stephen King.
Salem's Lot.
J.R.R. Tolkien.
Well, I'll cheat and say Lord of the Rings.
What chapter?
The Hands of the King.
The
When
Wow, so the
Aragorn,
post battle. Yeah, okay, so the post battle where they pick him. That's interesting. Because that's not in the movie,
no,
really. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a good one. Colleen Hoover.
don't know.
Hmm. Dr. Bill? I don't know who that. Colleen Hoover, Dr. Bill. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I don't know if these got jumbled. But obviously Bill Biersack.
Ah, well, I would say the Darkness Did Not, the vampire novel.
Hmm. And lastly, Charles Coulombe, UEL.
Huh?
Charles Coulombe, U E
E,
L.
uh, Blessed Emperor, Blessed Karl of Austria, the Legacy of a Holy Emperor, or A Catholic Quest for the Holy Grail.
Oh. Hmm. And then
I mean,
yeah, go
no,
on.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
He finished and said, "When Charles is done, tell him thanks for assembling my reading list." That's a good reading list, actually. That's a great thought. So
Oh,
that was an amazing lightning round. Actually, that was really cool because you really went interesting routes on some of these for some of these authors. So thank you for that. All right, we're gonna do some questions.
all right,
Uh,
let's do it to it.
John Smith. Um, he says, "What are the most common reasons people leave the church, and what should be a good response to those reasons? What tends to bring people back to the church?"
Well, there are a number of things. Some well-intentioned, some not. So a lot of modern people can't stand the sexual morality, and so they leave so they can abort or contracept or have, shall we say, suboptimal partners. Uh, the Others lose the faith because they just consider it too impossible to believe, like transubstantiation and all that. So that's all pretty, that's the one side. The other side are people who were turned off by Pope Francis and all the liberalism and the uncertainty today. And that drives quite a few people out of the church. Plus the general lackadaisical attitude that so many of the clergy have toward the sacred mysteries.
Hmm. Yeah, obviously, you know, a lot of people lose. I feel like who are young, and it relates to reasons where it's like pride of life. You're really worldly,
Yeah.
and so it's easy to get super worldly, right? So it's just but you know what's been on my mind a lot? I really kind of impromptu question from your interlocutor. This is actually
Okay.
this is a really important question, actually.
All right.
Um,
I'm here to be interlocked.
so for the sexual stuff, why people leave the church, like, oh, the church is against this. How do you bring those people back? Because I've got a lot of those, and I have certain ideas, but I feel like it's not going to work. You know?
Well, it's very hard as long as they're getting what they think they want in the immediate. It's very hard. Um, there are ways, there are things you can say and do. I mean, when you're talking to a girl in that position, you can ask her if she really, is that cheap. The guy you're shacked up with doesn't want to marry you. What does that tell you? And aren't you wasting his time? What are either going to do when something marriageable comes along for him? But to be honest with you, usually if someone is really caught up in that kind of thing, you've got to wait until and unless the pleasure gives out or the problems outweigh the pleasure.
Well,
Because
I actually meant something else because I feel like that's easier. I actually meant people who leave because of perhaps the church's position on same-sex marriage.
well, there's nothing to be done there either at all, because they, again, what people don't understand about these sorts of sins is that the church doesn't forbid them simply to deprive you of a good time. The church forbids them because they do not lead to happiness. Sins don't. They lead to guilt. They lead to remorse. They lead to the attempt to either strangle one's conscience with more and more repetition, or they lead you to despair. Um, part of the problem with the whole same-sex relationship thing, to be honest with you, and this is something that I'm saying this apart from morals, incidentally, but men and women, by and large, actually complement each other quite a bit. But men tend to be polygamous, and women tend to be very, very mono. Gosh, I can't think of it. Monogamous. So when you have two men, quite apart from everything else, their ability to be quote unquote faithful to each other is usually extremely limited, and very often they'll have a quote unquote open relationship. What does that mean? What kind of a relationship is that? It's not something that's going to be satisfying in the end. Contrary-wise, with two chicks, uh, that sort of relationship can get incredibly stifling, uh, suffocating, and can lead to all sorts of problems that way. Um, they really do not understand what kind of misery they can set up for themselves.
Well, I was able to go there when it comes to transgender. It's even easier in terms of the happiness route because that's just straight up poor philosophy. That your
No,
philosophy is saying that if you change this body part, like that the material change leads to the fundamental and deep rooted happiness, which just isn't so. That's
no,
just the
and that's
worst kind of
why
philosophy.
there are so many post-op trans people who kill themselves because they get what they think they want. There's no way back, and they're miserable, and there's no answer to it. Uh, you know, I've often said that I don't believe in the whole transgender thing. I don't mean by saying that I don't believe it. I don't believe in it in the sense that I don't believe in the Democratic Party. In other words, I don't like the Democratic Party. No, I don't believe in it because after 62 years of observation of men and women, I know that the biggest psychological difference between them, which is built by their physical difference, is that women are controlled by the menses for a chunk of every month, and men aren't. All women have childbirth as an issue, whether they want it or they don't want it. I mean, they just, whether or not a man does not have that. And lastly, the fear of rape. And yeah, I know there are ships and mines and so forth, but it's not the same thing. And it is an inherent fear in women, with good reason, given the history of mankind. Uh, but a man, and again, I don't care how fey you want to be, you can run around in women's clothing, you can do what you like. It doesn't matter. You are never going to know what it's like to have those two things, even if you give yourself over to self-mutilation. Contrary-wise, if you're a woman, you'll never know what life is like without them. You can't.
So okay, so obviously we've covered two aspects well. The shacking up people, the trans. But again, the same sex is still, in my opinion, the most difficult one. So let's say they're all about equal rights, and how come they have to suffer in this way where it's like, oh, heterosexual couples can be united in this way, and have that sort of fulfillment, whereas they aren't able to. And the most that I came up with, the closest thing that I could do is, you are putting romantic love on a pedestal as the highest love, which actually isn't true
No,
at all. But that's
no.
hard to swallow. Like, that's a hard pill. Like that's the truth, and that's what I've thought of. But then I don't think
And all,
it's
all
gonna
our
do
movies,
it.
all our movies, television, and music are against it.
Exactly. We're
So,
programmed the opposite.
yeah. But again, sometimes all you can do is kind of like with a recovering drunk. Sometimes all you could do is let them go to the bottom and hope they'll, come up again.
So did you have any ammunition in this area beyond just it's a raw deal, but this is the facts of life
Well, it's
here?
more than just a raw deal, though, because uh, if you embrace, you might say, the Catholic life, um, yeah, you're not going to be having partners and so forth. But in all likelihood, another, a whole other set of circumstances, a whole other community will embrace you. And I mean, part of the problem is that society does encourage everyone to be narcissistic today, to only think about themselves, their own needs, so called. And what's true of the same sex attracted people is true of everyone. We live in a society that basically offers us everything and in return just asks for our soul. That little thing. Um, but it's tough to get people to see it, but you have to keep trying.
Okay. One last thing. So, what brings people back in the church? I saw a flyer on one of the parishes about this, and the number one reason, believe it or not, is the Eucharist. The Eucharist. People
I could
want,
totally see that. Yeah.
which makes sense. That's the way it should be. That's the heart of our religion, right there.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen that personally. I haven't personally witnessed where someone say, "Oh, I want the Eucharist. I converted," but it totally makes sense.
Well, and also don't forget, part of it is when you go to the traditional mass, that's still the Eucharist that's attracting them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just a nice ceremony.
All right. Next question. What is the state of the church in Latin America? It seems that the church is on the decline there as well, but it is never talked about.
Well, it is on the decline, and the reason it's never talked about is that the so-called reforms of Vatican II were particularly nasty there and cost the church a lot of credibility. The rise of liberation theology led to a lot of clerics wanting to talk about social change when their impoverished citizens wanted to hear about Christ and salvation and so forth. So as a result, the Pentecostals have made huge inroads in Latin America. Would you believe that Guatemala is now more Protestant than Catholic? and that's
Wow.
squarely on the Catholic hierarchies of those countries. That's squarely their own doing. To be fair, of course, a lot of the funding for this stuff comes from the United States. We may not be the best. We may not be the best hemisphere to live in.
Are you going to turn off your phone, or are you going to continue to show contempt for this audience? Contempt. we okay, I don't know what's happening. Okay, there's blurry words on the screen. Yeah. This is
It's
it's
a bit
midnight.
of a
Yeah.
no. It's midnight, and there's a bit of a domestic crisis with my family in California.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. All right. Well, let it ding to your heart's content. So we've got 2 more questions, and then we're through this.
Oh, well, says you. What if I come up with questions and start asking the audience for answers? Yeah.
Okay.
Andrew from New Jersey. Why did the World's Organ Store and the Paramus Mall go out of business? Don't have an answer for that one, do you, big guy? I didn't think so. Sandra, why is it that we have absolutely no proof that George Washington was black? Didn't think you could answer that one. Didn't think so. Chicago Jacobite. Why is it Mayor Daley never, ever observed the anniversary of the Battle of Culloden? Yeah, I didn't think so. So you notice how they're not answering.
Vendée Radio?
Oh, yes. Vendée Radio's smart guy. Why is it that we don't commemorate the Battle of Peterloo with a Saints' Day in the Missal? Not even the Ordinarians. Yeah. Yeah, that's right, pal. Yeah.
Wow.
See, they'll call me out and demand that I answer cricket. But see, when I do it, crickets. You notice that? Crickets.
Sad.
Well,
All
let's
right.
go on with the rest of them.
Let's go on.
I don't care about all these freeloaders and carpetbaggers and scalawags. I don't care.
All right. Kyle says, "Hi guys, I just became a patron, and my first question is something I've never asked on Off the Menu, which is surprising since it's about monarchy. I want to ask Charles about the Magna Carta. What exactly it was? Was it a good thing? And is it true that the church condemned it? Also, can Charles explain his view of King John I, also known as John the Bad, John Lackland?"
Well, the Magna Carta was a garter worn by a courtier at the lady who was a courtier at the court of. No. The Magna Carta, the Great Charter, was extracted from King John at the field of Runnymede in the 1200s after his brother, King Richard the Lionheart, for whom he had played regent, and sort of missed around the country, thus giving rise to Robin Hood and all that sort of thing. It was a declaration basically couched like a gracious concession by the king to his bishops and barons, setting forth the rights that they would henceforth enjoy. And again, it was presented as the restoration of their rights, not as something new or revolutionary. Their minds didn't really work in that way, thank heaven. But Pope Innocent III was not happy with it, not because of the contents of the Magna Carta, but because of the format. King John had already named himself a feudatory of the Holy See, and that being the case, that being the case, he believed that Innocent believed that his prior approval was required for the Magna Carta to take effect. But the bishops and barons said, no, we want it now, and they got it. So that's why. Nothing to do with the format, nothing to do with the decree itself, and everything to do with the way it was issued. As far as John Lackland goes, as I say, he had been regent for King Richard the Lionheart. He became his king himself, and he's not really great at it. He lost a lot of the territories the family had in France to the King of France. Hence, John Lackland, or as we call him in French, Jean Santerre.
All right, final question is from Jonathan.
All right.
He says, last year, I was listening to Dr. Ray on the radio, and he was asking the questions many boomers ask. Why do young people not go to church anymore? End quote. I wrote into his show telling him why. I told him that I'm one of those millennials who stopped going to Mass for a while because the way the faith was presented to me, I didn't have any reason to take it seriously. I told him that the traditional Mass changed my life, helped me see the majesty of the faith, and that without it, I probably would have eventually fallen right back out of the church for the same reasons I did the first time. He responded with kind of a non-answer and proceeded to say he disagrees with the reasons I gave on why young people don't go to church anymore, even though I went through it myself. Wow.
Obviously,
wow.
You don't understand your own experiences. I'm sorry, kid. You just don't realize how wrong you are about your own concepts, your own, internal life.
I've literally gone through the same thing, Jonathan. It's the most frustrating thing in the world.
Jonathan, it's a bit as though you said to me, Charles, I really don't like strawberry. And I said, yeah, you do. What are you talking about? You love strawberry. No, Charles, I don't like strawberry ice cream. Yeah, you do. You love strawberry ice cream. That's the only kind of ice cream you ever eat. No, Charles, I don't like strawberry ice cream. I don't want strawberry ice cream. Yeah, you do. You want 3 scoops. And a strawberry shake. No, I don't want any of that. Yes, you do. Why are you being so obstinate? You know you want them. No, I don't want it. Yes, you do. You're just being a troublemaker.
You're
just being a troublemaker. You know you want your strawberry milkshake and your strawberry ice cream, and you're refusing it. You're doing this just to be spiteful. Now stop it. You know that you should go ahead and eat it and drink up that shake because strawberry is your favorite. It is not my favorite. It's never been my favorite. I don't like it. Yes, you do like it. You've always liked it. You loved it when you were a baby. You love it now. In the immortal words of that great theologian, Groucho Cardinal Marx, who you got to believe, your own eyes or me?
That is one of the most powerful metaphors you've unleashed on this show. That's so dead on.
Well, that's true. What do you know about it? It's just you. I know better.
All right. So Jonathan, let's see, where is he? So Dr. Ray disagrees with the reasons I gave on why young people don't go to church anymore, even though I went through it myself. Nothing against.
Well, you don't know your own experience. He does.
Nothing against Dr. Ray. I think he does a lot of good. Boomers in my own
and he can read minds. It's amazing.
Boomers in my own family have done similar things where I'll give them the answer to the very question, and they just continue on as though they didn't hear what I just said.
Well, you gave the wrong answer.
Why do boomers always respond this way? The boomer generation is just a mystery to me because it seems like even when they encounter truth, they just ignore it and keep doing what they're doing. There's no logical sequence to their actions. It just seems like they think, this is what I've always done. I've always liked it this way, so I'm going to continue doing this even though I know it's either not right or not a logical way to proceed, even though I've come to know the truth about the certain matter.
All right.
Wow, Jonathan, preach. That's just straight up cathartic to me because that's so dead on. I feel like us young men have like encountered this. Like if we ever like put ourselves out there, that it just doesn't make sense. Where like yeah, you say it perfectly. Yeah, I answered your question. Now you know. So now you just have to accept it. So why are we still arguing? I've just bold faced answered your question. Um, it's unbelievable. It truly is unbelievable. Um,
You know, okay, Jonathan, I'm going to help you, and I'm going to help Vinny too. I want to say something now, as a junior boomer, that I think you all need to hear. One summer evening in 1955, a group of 180 teenagers of all races and religions, meeting at a workshop high in the California mountains, locked arms, formed a circle, and sang a song of peace. They felt that singing the song, with its simple basic sentiment, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me," helped to create a climate for world peace and understanding. When they came down from the mountain, these inspired young people brought the song with them and started sharing it. And as though on wings, "Let There Be Peace on Earth" began an amazing journey around the globe. It traveled first, of course, with the young campers back to their homes and schools, churches, and clubs. The song was taped, copied, printed in songbooks, and passed by word of mouth. Eventually, it spread overseas, sung by Maoris in New Zealand and Zulus in Africa. The song has been recorded by a host of vocal artists, including Tennessee Ernie Ford, Pat Boone, Mahalia Jackson, Johnny Mathis, and Placido Domingo. And I think that that really sums up the experience of my generation. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. And I think that to really understand what we tried to do for you is to understand the angst of a whole generation that was trying to find a new way, a different way, a more human way. And in so doing, really wrecked everything.
so you
So the
know,
problem is, I'm only slightly kidding. The problem is, mind you, not all boomers are committed to such crap, but those who are, if you're asking them to do something different, you're asking them basically to reverse the habits of a lifetime and the mental habits of a lifetime. And that's just very difficult.
okay, that's kind of what I was. That kind of leads into what I was going to ask, which is to be fair to the boomers. Um, is this a quality that is particularly unique to the boomer generation, or do
No.
generations before that and after that also embody this characteristic?
From time to time, from time to time. I mean, you could make the argument that the romantic generation of the 18 teens and 20s had a lot in common with the boomers. Uh,
How are you able
the
to
diff-
do? How are you able to do that one? How are you able to go all the way back there to make that assessment?
well, because both sets uh, grew up against the background of war when conventional mores were sort of shaken up. Uh, the biggest difference, of course, is that Catholicism was much stronger in the Romantic era and much more self confident than it was in the 60s. But um, other than that, I mean, it was a very creative time, and the 60s were a very creative time. But the church played very little role in the 60s, unlike the Romantic era. But if you think of people like Byron and Shelley and Keats and all those guys and the lives they led, very reminiscent in certain ways of the hippies.
That's true. Hmm.
So I see a resemblance there. The bright young things of the 20s, same,
Hmm.
because of World War One. It's It's a bit difficult because my generation is in charge right now, and especially the church, seemingly extremely opposed to anything healthy or good or decent. But that'll pass when we do. There's a comedian who's a little bit older than me, but he made a very funny comment. He said, "I just wish the boomers would go. Unfortunately, when they do, they're taking me with them."
Well, I like the one comment you said. I don't know if you said it on the show, but it was someone saying that they were shocked that they were the same age as old people.
Yeah, that's the
I
T-shirt.
love-
The T-shirt. It's weird being the same age as old people, and that is very much a boomer sentiment.
I love that. That's it right there.
Well, our grandparents were our age, and it's horrible. And believe me when I tell you, I don't want to be crude, but believe me when I tell you that free love isn't all that exciting when you reach a certain age.
It's pretty crude.
Yeah, well, they, these old age homes are really passion pits for the elderly.
Okay, let's not. Okay. All right, that's gonna do it for this episode.
What? You don't want to hear about senior love? Love is love. And if the rainbow's entirely gray, that tells you something too. Nothing you want to hear, but still. It only takes a spark to get a fire going. That's how it is with God's love. Something, you want to pass it on.
Okay, great. Pass it on. I'm all in favor of passing it on, and actually, I'm going to pass on it. All right.
The self-help guru I sent you, who starts out always with, "Hi, just checking in."
Yeah.
Well, one of my classmates here, I sent him one of those tapes, and he looked at it. His response was, "If he's checking in, I'm checking out."
Yep.
You felt the same way, did you?
Yep. Yes, I did. All right.
Well, this master class that you've received this evening, do you feel impressed by it?
I feel like this was my favorite week in a long time. Combining the pre-show, the plus hour long pre-show with this, I almost feel like it's just been a full week, honestly, in terms as far as the show goes. So this was really thank you for that, Charles.
Well, you're welcome. Quick point, we didn't mention this at all. I want to say kudos to the people of Los Angeles for boycotting the Dodgers.
Right.
It's the only way you can affect anything, ladies and gentlemen, is by the pocketbook. So
yeah, no, we're totally about sort of inclusivity, which is why I feel like the Dodgers should have a Catholic night too, right? It's weird how they don't have that. Isn't that weird? Aren't we? I thought we were about being inclusive.
Well, only to a degree. Only to a degree. And the Dodgers should also go back to Brooklyn.
I'm fine with that.
They've been corrupted by LA. They need to go back home.
I'm fine with that. All right, we need to go, ladies and gentlemen. It's been fun. Hope you've had fun with us.
We'll see you back next week, my friends, on this enchanted isle.
I thought you were gonna start a poem.
Well, no. All right, I can give you a poem. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale. A tale of a fateful trip.
Okay.
It started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. The mate was a mighty sailing man, the skipper brave and sure. 5 passengers set sail that day for a 3-hour tour. The weather started getting rough. The tiny ship was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew, the minnow would be lost. The minnow would be lost. The ship's aground on the shore of this deserted desert isle, with Gilligan, the skipper too, the millionaire, and his wife. the movie star, the Professor and Mary Ann, here on Gilligan's Isle.
All right. Was that actually a funny show, or was that just iconic?
No, it was a funny show. I enjoyed it.
Okay. All right, guys. Remember, if it's Monday
It's off the menu.
and the soul you save,
Maybe your own.
see you next week.
Good night.